Good evening, and welcome to this Kenyon Review reading with Jill Christman and Mark Neely. I'm Elizabeth Dark, Associate Director of Programs for the Kenyon Review, and we, along with our co-sponsor Ira Sukrungrung and the Richard L. Thomas, Ira Sukrungrung, who is the Richard L. Thomas Chair in Creative Writing, are delighted to have you with us for this event. If you would like to access closed captioning for this evening, you may do so by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of your screen. And if at any point you experience technical difficulties, our intern Ocean is keeping an eye on the chat and is ready to assist if you want to private message them at any point. Ocean will also be posting helpful links in the chat throughout the evening, so keep your eyes open for those. And the chat will remain open during the reading for encouraging comments to our readers. And after the reading, we will take some time for questions, which you can ask indirectly by putting your question in the chat, or you can ask it directly by clicking on the raised hand icon or writing question or I have a question, and we will call on you. But now I get to introduce these lovely people. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, Jill Christman and Mark Neely both served as faculty for my MFA program, where they were both known for their generous gifts of time as well as the substantive, helpful feedback that they gave to their students. I never actually had either in class, but I roomed with and wrote alongside their students who were often talking about Jill and Mark's feedback. What did Jill say? What did Mark say? And so their wisdom was bestowed upon me as well, and for that I am grateful. This evening, we will first hear from Jill Christman, who is a 2020 NEA Prose Fellow and the author of 2 memoirs, WP Prize for Creative Nonfiction, and Borrowed Babies, Apprenticing for Motherhood. Her essays have appeared in magazines such as Brevity, Creative Nonfiction, Fourth Genre, Iron Horse Literary Review, and Long Reads. And her new collection, If This Were Fiction, A Love Story and Essays, will be released by the University of Nebraska Press next fall. A senior editor for Riverteeth, a journal of nonfiction narrative, and executive producer of the podcast Indelible, Campus Sexual Violence, she teaches graduate and undergraduate classes in creative nonfiction writing and literary editing at Ball State University. Please join me in welcoming Jill Christman.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Can everybody hear me okay? It's so nice to see all your faces. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Ira. Thank you, Ocean. And to all of you, wherever you are in the world, for joining us. It's fun to see friends and families and former students out there. It means a lot to us. And yeah, Mark and I are in the house together. So we put him upstairs and I'm downstairs in the kitchen, and we locked both kids and the dog in the room over there. So if you see me go like this, you know what's going on. So I wish that we were together on the Kenyon campus and that we were having this reading in the Finn House, which we actually got to visit a couple of weeks ago. It's pretty fantastic, and wandering down the middle path afterwards, talking literature. But instead, I'm happy that you're here in my kitchen with me. I'm going to read some segments from the beginning of a long essay. It is an essay that is so long, in fact, that it won Iron Horse Literary Review's long story contest, especially for long stories, although I had to go up against the fiction. And it was published in a beautiful ebook last spring. So Ocean is going to drop that link in the chat at the end. So if you're so compelled, you can go read the whole essay and find out what happens. It's a bit of a cliffhanger. And what else is there to say? Not too much. For a brief period of my life, I thought I was going to write a collection of gerund-titled essays. I got as far as spinning, and this one is called Falling. Falling. There are so many ways to fall. We fall from trees, off cliffs, and out of favor. We might fall for a trick or down a rabbit hole. We free fall into nothing, and all too often we feel as if we've fallen short. We fall from grace. Sometimes we fall and we can't get up, like a beetle on its back or a drunk. After my first baby was born, I experienced such a tremendous fall of hair, I feared I might go bald. Our faces might fall, or our weights on the scale. as might our stocks and our rankings. Our faces might fall after our stocks fall, in that order. When we're delivered of the worst news, we fall to our knees. Have you done this? I have. The knees simply lose their capacity to bear the weight, the horror, and we fall. Henry, my boy, he was always falling. In my dreams, night after night, Henry falling. The falling became a pattern, a trope. When I closed my eyes, I knew what was coming, but I never knew how to stop his fall or where to stand to catch him. I never caught him. Before Henry fell over 20 feet from the sugar maple, I had watched him plummet dozens of times before in my nightmares, sometimes waking with the jolt of impact, feeling the jerk of his limbs and my own bones, sometimes seeing his broken body unmoving far below, and sometimes losing him altogether, the fall taking him down a tunnel or into black open air, the denouement of the dream all searching and running and screaming, "Henry," until I kicked myself awake on sweaty sheets. In my Henry falling dreams, those were the only three possible endings: impact, breaking, or gone. When Henry fell from the sugar maple in his yoga teacher's yard, because I'd seen this horror so many times before, I didn't really know as I watched my son falling, whether I was dreaming or if this was real, or how Henry's fall would end. He was 8. Half a year after Henry fell, on June 3rd, 2017, Alex Honold climbed the 3,000-foot sheer wall of El Capitan in Yosemite without a rope. I'd like to pause here to say I wrote this essay before the movie. All right, I'm going to keep going now. Gearless climbing without aids, say bolts stuck into cracks to provide a finger hold or a safety rope to catch you if you fall, is called free soloing, and Honold is considered the best in the world. Because free soloing is the most dramatic kind of climbing, one slip on one day and you're dead, he's probably the most well-known climber in the world, even though he'd be the first to tell you he's not the best climber. Honold is playing a game that few others want to play. When I was in my early 20s and deep into my reckless period, I used to hang out with river kayakers, big water, and I thought running rivers was scary. Back then, I thought my tanned, muscled friends who lived out of their Subarus and had as many uses for a carabiner as a dance mom has for a safety pin were bold. And I wasn't wrong, but I'll tell you what, my kayakers with their class 5 runs over waterfalls with the kind of hydraulics that could choose to hold onto their boats forever, rip their helmeted heads off, or spit them out to live another day, has nothing on these guys. Free soloists are another breed. Free soloists smear themselves up miles of granite cliff, more rock lizard than human. And then some of them leap over the edge in base jumping wingsuits, deploying parachutes at the last minute and hiding in the woods from the rangers. Sure, you might clip a tree or another cliff edge on the way down and die. But if you don't die, what a rush. What a quick trip to the ground. Dries out my throat just thinking about it. People do this. Every day, people do this, and sometimes they die. During my brief but intense obsession with people who choose to engage in sports that might kill them, I found a skydiving site that reported 1 death per 500 wingsuit jumps. Not jumpers, jumps. Those strike me as pretty poor odds for those who choose to don a suit made of ripstop nylon, a kind of high-tech flying squirrel costume, and soar as high as eagles. Watching a documentary called Valley Rising on the history of rock climbing in Yosemite, which I recommend, I learned not only that climbing communities were a real boys' club, shocking, I know, but also that the first ascent of El Cap was completed in 1958 and had taken climbing pioneer Warren Harding and his team of merry men 45 days over the course of 18 months. The trip up was so long that Harding's mother roasted a Thanksgiving turkey and sent the greasy bird up on ropes. There was much cheap red wine and plastic gallon jugs. If you've never been to Yosemite, but you have been to New York City, and you need a visual for the route on El Capitan that Honold scaled, picture 2 Empire State Buildings stacked skyward, foundation to antenna. In feet, that's 3,000, or over half a mile up into the sky. You really have to crane the neck of your imagination. At a certain point, thinking about an extreme this extreme is like trying to honestly comprehend numbers as big as the national debt or the distance to Neptune. Really far, really big, really fucking high. And the most efficient, albeit illegal, way to get down off the summit once you've made your way there is to put on your bat suit and jump. I don't know why I'm telling you all this. Is it because I wish I took greater physical risks? Because I want to be the kind of mother who belays the climbing rope of life out a little farther for my overprotected children? Or simply because the capacity for a human being to overcome the natural fear of falling captivates me? Scaling the impossible, defying gravity, wingsuits. What do these climbers want? Do they crave that natural injection of adrenaline to the heart? Do they need to go a little higher and faster each time to get that rush? Or like addicts, I wonder if they get to a point where nothing is high enough to give them what they need. Do they want to be superheroes, something better or just different from plain old human? Or, and honestly, in my heart, I think this last one is probably closest to the truth. Do they feel the most alive and human when they're walking the knife edge of death? In the end, before the end, are they trying to make something beautiful? When Henry fell, my husband Mark and I were both there, having pulled up the side of the yard with the tree at just about the same time in separate cars. Kids' yoga had ended and my class was going to begin. Mark was there to bring the kids home. This was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon. After my own class, I would arrive home to the kids hanging out on the couch, the smell of Mark cooking dinner, a regular Sunday evening, together and safe. I swear I don't take these moments for granted. I've been paying attention. I know everything, anything can be undone in an instant. I remember. But what I don't know is how we all live with this knowledge every day. Here's Honold. This is not me, you'll tell from the prose. A lot of people say I don't feel fear or that I don't fear death, but that's just not true. I have the same healthy hope of survival as everybody else. I don't want to die, at least not yet. Laughs. I think I just have more of an acceptance that I will die at some point. I understand that, but I don't want to baby myself along the way. I want to live in a certain way, which requires taking a higher degree of risk, and that's acceptable to me. Henry fell on the Sunday after the 2016 election. Donald Trump, a misogynist reality TV personality with strange orange skin, no record of public service, and what appeared to be a narcissistic personality disorder, had been elected to serve as the 45th president of the United States. Nothing seemed real. Into this dystopian political landscape, Henry fell. And when he fell, I didn't scream. None of us did. Sherry, the yoga teacher, stood unmoving under the tree with her face turned up and her arms folded across her chest. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but later she would tell me that she was talking to him the whole time, telling him not to hurry, to think about every step. But she wished she'd told him to kick his flip-flops off and come down in his bare feet. She'd worried about the flip-flops, heard the unattached rubber shoes sliding on the bark, but she was trying so hard not to scare or distract him. When she'd come out of the house after yoga, he was already in the tree. Really high, she told me later. Really, really high. I knew what she meant by that. Too high. Fall and don't survive high. Nobody screamed when Henry fell. Not Sherry, the teacher, not Mark, the father, not me, the mother, not Ella, the sister, who was up on the platform facing in our direction, watching her parents arrive, and therefore didn't see what Mark and I saw from our vantage point 50 feet away. Henry falling. Alex Honnold knows what he's doing. On the morning of the El Capitan, he ate oats, flax, and blueberries in his white van, a mobile base camp, put on his favorite red t-shirt, and started climbing into the pink light of morning at 5:32 a.m. Beyond that red t-shirt, Honold carried on his body 2 pieces of equipment, sticky-soled climbing shoes and a bag of chalk hooked to his belt. Climbers need dry hands. Just thinking about that bag of chalk and why it was there makes my own palms sweat. Just shy of 4 hours after he'd curled his fingers into the first grip, Honold pulled himself over the lip of the summit and stood under the blue sky. He'd made it. He defied possibility and made history. He was the first climber to free soul El Capitan. The granite cliffs of Yosemite must have looked amazing from up there under the blue of the mid-morning sky. And if Honold believed in God, He might have given God a nod in that moment, a nod to the wonder that was the world spreading out beneath his climbing shoes, a nod to the fact that a kid like him, a skinny guy in a red t-shirt with a bag of chalk tied to his waist, could make it so high and live to tell the tale. But Honold does not believe in God. Honold believes in careful planning and meticulous training. Honold believes in his muscles. Honold believes in his mind. He probably looked out over that breathtaking landscape, fully in possession of his own breath, and felt good. Good to rest his arms and fingers. Good to know he'd done something he'd been training to do for years. Good to stand at the top. He might have thought, wow, that was rad. What's next? I am terrified of heights. My natural fear of death by plummeting is strong. Before my children were born, I was afraid of the multi-story escalators at the Mall of America, gripping the sliding handrail and thinking how easy it would be to vault over into all that empty, glittering air. My intrusive thoughts were comprehensive. I would imagine myself all the way down, 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 and join all the other horrified shoppers as they gathered around to view my broken body, arms and legs unnaturally akimbo, unmoving. Oh, I'm not afraid of heights, I explained to Mark back then, but I am afraid that I might jump. And Mark shook his head at me. Honey, that's what being afraid of heights is. Oh. After Ella was born, my fear got worse. When she was 2, we took a trip to Louisville. Our hotel was an Embassy Suites. Honestly, Hilton people, what are you thinking? Have your lawyers failed to explain liability? Our room was on the top floor. We took the glass elevator up. A glass elevator? We whooshed past the parrot in his cage and the trunks of the tropical trees growing in the atrium. Up and up and up we whooshed until the tops of the trees shrank to the sizes of mop heads. And when the doors of what Ella called the alligator slid open, she took a few toddling steps out onto the carpet, just feet from the railing, and I snatched her up, clutching her to my chest and sliding along the interior wall where the doors to the rooms were. Across the column of open air, across certain death, I could see some big kids leaning over the railing, calling down to their friends far below. Sweet Jesus. I study Honold's face in the National Geographic photo. His olive skin against the red of his favorite t-shirt and deep, calm, chocolate brown eyes. He's looking up, eyes focused like a monk in meditation, completely without fear, completely in the moment. Where will he put his hand? And then the other hand, and then foot, foot, hand, hand, foot, foot, and on up the side of the mountain, always looking up. He knows exactly. Every move is rehearsed and memorized. There is nothing but the climb. Honal didn't tell his mother, and before I began my ascent into Honold curiosity, what makes this guy, this antithesis to everything I feel in my bones, tick? I imagined him calling his mother right afterwards. Good morning, Mom. Are you having a good day? Yeah, awesome, great. Yeah, I'm so stoked. I just free soloed El Capitan. I'm the first, Mom. And I imagined his mother might have stopped breathing and then begun again. But now I know that climbing is simply Honold's life. Climbing is his job, and his mother trusts him. Neither mother nor son is possessed of a dramatic disposition. I've also learned that my "what does your mother think" concern is a top 3 interviewer question for Honold and his mother, and they're both completely bored by the fear projected on them by the rest of the world, by mothers like me. Here's Honold's mom, Deirdre. Would he really be alive the way he is now? Or would he be biding his time like so many of us? Dying takes many forms, so does living. The hard part is recognizing them. I love the sound of rain falling on a tin roof. The temperature can fall, as can her hair over her eyes when she's feeling shy. Darkness frequently falls, rising only when there's evil going down in a place like Middle Earth or on the planet Naboo. Light and tides both fall and then rise again. A gaggle of geese might fall all over themselves to get to the scattering grain. To protect another or ourselves, exclusively metaphorically, I think, in modern times, we might fall on our own swords. I baked cornbread and felt dismayed to see it fall apart. Emotionally, I've been known to fall apart, psychologically too. That's life. Things fall apart, right? I've had cakes fall. You really shouldn't stomp around outside the oven, and jokes fall flat. But I do not fall behind on payments. I am very careful that way. When we first moved to Indiana, there was no daylight savings, but now our clocks spring forward and fall back just like everybody else's. It seems to me that in literature, things are forever falling from lips. Crumbs, wisdom, confessions, secrets, crumbs of wisdom, you name it. The fear of falling is classified along with loud noises as one of the two simple fears. In other words, we're all supposed to be born afraid of falling. We can see this innate fear in babies when they first learn to crawl. I once watched a PBS special with footage from a baby lab. Experimenters encouraged their baby subjects to crawl along a countertop covered by a black and white checked cloth. So babies in onesies crawling on long checkerboards, and the babies were pretty chill until the testers replaced a section of the counter with plexiglass so the crawling babies could see the drop to the floor. Some of the babies would reach out a tentative hand and test the glass, and some of the babies would just sit back on their diapered rumps and wail. Precious few babies took the crawl across the glass. The babies would stop crawling at the edge of their countertop precipice and scream. Next, the experimenters tried kittens. The kittens clustered in a mewling pile as far from the plexiglass as possible. Finally, they tried baby ducks. The ducks waddled happily across the gap. Ducks can fly. There's no reason to be afraid. If I could fly, I might be able to free solo El Capitan. I mean, if I happen to be living in a body with the strength, skill, and inclination to do that kind of thing. It's a lot of ifs. Honold is a climbing machine. Physically, he's as lean as a weasel, as taut as a wire pulled between two towers. Studying photos, I notice his toes. They're crazy long, finger-like, looking as if he could hold a pencil or cling to the edge of a cliff. A pencil width is sometimes the entire depth of his next hold when he's climbing. His van is outfitted with a special cliff simulator for doing pull-ups, 2 arms, 1 arm, just the fingertips. To someone for whom the flex arm hang and the presidential physical fitness test stands as my deepest elementary school humiliation, this level of ninja-like agility and strength fascinates me. But if we line him up with the other elite climbers in the world, what sets Honold apart? Physical training is a thing that can be done, but it's Honold's brain that makes him the best free solo climber in the world. With free soloing, obviously I know that I'm in danger, but feeling fearful while I'm up there is not helping me in any way, he says. It's only hindering my performance, so I just set it aside and leave it be. I just set it aside and leave it be. When I read this alone in my room, I snort, just set it aside. Oh, mother. Could it come down to physiology? Scientists have scanned Alex Honold's brain, and it's true. His amygdala, the corner of our brain that leaps out of those brain shadows to shriek, "Get away from the edge, you're too close, it's too high, you're gonna fall, you crazy fool," is very small. What of mine, I wonder? Is my amygdala bulging, crowding out the other more rational parts of my brain, like the nervous chubby girl at the lunch table I once was? Some days I feel so afraid. I realize I'm plumbing the extreme. But if Honold can send away fear from higher than birds, shouldn't I be able to raise a couple of kids without the constant feeling that I am trying to swallow my own heart? Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Jill, so much. That I'm not gonna sleep well. That is a big fear. This when you showed there's a huge fear. I have the honor to introduce Mark. I'm on sabbatical this semester and I haven't done anything in sabbatical. So I had a lot of fun writing this intro because I think all this energy of creativity that I haven't been tapping into went into Mark's intro. So I want to talk about Mark Neely, but by not talking about his poetry. Here's the thing about introductions of poets, by the way, you can push metaphor to the limit, and in the end, everything is about poetry anyways. For a long time, I knew Mark as Jill's husband. Jill and I were on the board of AWP together, and during one of those dinners, during those long, laborious weekend board meetings, Jill said, "My husband plays disc golf." Note, She did not say, my husband is a poet, or my husband works at Ball State University too and does as much as I do while maintaining a beautiful family. Nope, it was my husband, he plays disc golf. For people who do not know me, I am an obsessive person. When I get into something, I get into it. I think about nothing else. I've been obsessed, with the K-pop band BTS these past 2 years. And for those in the know, Jimin is my bias. I've been obsessed with taking care of tropical fish. And every morning, I'm like a chemist with test tubes trying to figure out ammonia and nitrite levels. And for the last 12 years, I have been very obsessed with disc golf. Some of you may know it as Frisbee golf, but for true players like myself and Mark, disc golf is the correct term because we're not throwing flimsy Frisbees, right? We are throwing discs, a whole bunch of different types of discs. Overstable disc, understable disc, stable disc, putters, mid-range disc, fairway drivers, long-distance drivers. Some weigh 175 grams, some 165 grams. And this stuff matters in a headwind, believe you me. So when I met Mark Neely on a disc golf course in Tampa, Florida, right on the bay, and we were joined by other writers and creative writing students who are equally obsessed with disc golf too, we didn't talk about writing things. And we definitely didn't talk about poetry. No one talks about poetry when they disc golf. And Mark Neely, in our initial meeting, did not say, hey, I'm Mark Neely, the author of the poetry collection Dirty Mom and Beasts of the Hill. And he never said, I'm Mark Neely, I'm the recipient of an NEA in poetry and an Indiana individual artist grant. He didn't say, I'm Mark Neely, and co-wrote this wonderfully bizarre book with fiction writer Sean Lovelace entitled Nice Things by James Franco. Yes, everyone, the actor James Franco. He didn't say, oh, and FYI, I'm the 2020 winner of the Idaho Prize in Poetry for my newest book, Ticker. He wouldn't have said that anyway because Mark and I met in 2015. No, we just played disc golf. And I'm not going to write that Mark played like his poems because that would be too much like a poetry introduction where two things that don't really go together converge beautifully in the end. I think this introduction of Mark is an introduction of regret because I am a big fan of Mark's work. And I wish I had asked in the subsequent rounds of disc golf we have played together how he does it. Not throw the disc, which was pretty good, but write the poetry he does. His play with multiple tones and moods and rhythms in his verse, how he can go from darkly serious and sometimes humorous poems of longing and love and adolescence to lyrical criticisms of our culture on the brink, to the tragedies of war and terrorism, to a 4-word poem like the one I discovered in the Yalba review titled Constitution. And here's the poem, Constitution. Make it new, duh. The joy of reading Mark Neely's work is the artistic joy he gives readers, the world he creates within the boundaries of the poem, and each the creation of a new language, as poet Jane Hirschfeld talks about. In his newest collection, Ticker, we follow a character by the name of Bruce, and Bruce breaks our hearts. Bruce is broken, and yet Bruce manages at times to find minor enlightenments in what Bob Hickok calls the hollowness of a culture. I haven't asked Mark about his poems during our rounds of disc golf, but that's the beauty of a friendship. There is a lot of time, a lot of rounds left to play, a lot of courses to explore. Tonight, I'm just happy to have Jill's husband with us, Mark Neely.
Thank you so much. I can't say thank you enough to Ira for that amazing introduction. The reason we don't talk about writing when we're playing disc golf is because mostly what we do is when someone throws a good shot, like Ira said, there's a lot of different kinds of discs. So if someone throws a good shot, you say, what'd you throw there? And hope that maybe you could buy one of those and like throw that same shot, but it never works out that way. Sort of like writing, like you look at a writer you admire and you see an amazing line and like, I'm going to try to do that. And of course, you can only be the writer you are. And unfortunately for me, you can only be the disc golfer you are. So thanks, Ira. I really appreciate it. And Elizabeth and Ocean, thank you so much. And thank you to the Kenyon Review for hosting us. It's a pleasure to be reading with Jill. We haven't done many readings together, but it's always fun. I prefer to go first because I don't like to follow stuff like that. I do want to clarify one thing, which is that when she said the smell of Mark cooking dinner, that's the food. It's not the smell. But yeah, you get it. You probably got that, but I wanted to clarify. So I am going to read mostly from a new book that I just came out called Ticker, but I want to read one poem from my previous book. And I like to do this one when I read with Jill because it's embarrassing for both of us. It's called More and More. More and more, I fight for sleep. I read Milton or drop a Xanax in a shot of bourbon, but Lycidas tends to kill me quicker. Then I snap awake at 4 a.m. and Google my college girlfriend. I find her on the steps of an expensive Chicago townhouse with her blonde husband. He looks like a low-level Nazi or Danish prince. I can only console myself with this fact. Scientists predict blondes will be extinct in 100 years. I hate this Googling. It used to be you could move away and make old girlfriends disappear. And why does Google always win? What about all the other search engines yearning to be verbs? I refuse to Google you, my nurse. I'd rather Yahoo like we used to in your attic apartment, our shadows on the wall like Kurosawa's samurai. But the sleek and mathematical beat out the sensual every time. The present always drags the past into the future. And here's another thing. The blondes aren't dying out. I Googled blonde extinction and found out it's a hoax. Blondes, in fact, will live forever. I'm going to apologize to any blondes in the audience. It's definitely not you, it's me. All right, I am going to read some from this new book called Ticker, which came out this summer. That is me at the end of 18 months of the pandemic there. And yeah, I'm excited about this book. It took a long time to write, and they did a wonderful job with it. And it's been really fun reading from it. And yeah, I also want to say thank you all for coming. And it's really cool to see like all these faces from different aspects of my life and different geographies. And it's very cool and exciting. So let me read this poem. So as Ira said, this focuses on a character named Bruce, and this is kind of an introduction to his character. And it's also an introduction to some of the concerns of the book, like capitalism, consumerism, environmental catastrophe, pretty much all fun stuff. And yeah, I'll read it. I do mention Takeru Kobayashi, who many of you will know is a famous competitive eater. And he's most famous for winning many times the Nathan's annual hot dog eating contest, which takes place on the 4th of July. This is called Automaton. There goes another mountainside of trees, mown down by orange rovers and burned to fuel Bruce's mouth. An engine designed to run forever, like Edison's fabled bulb, like Takeru Kobayashi, who downed 57 cow brains once. When Bruce eats a hamburger, he can't stop picturing the bolt pistol. The French, on the other hand, fork up Blanquette du Veau while lovingly remembering the birth. The Hadron Collider whirls beneath their houses, simulating the vast forces between Bruce's ears. The Amish won't go near it. They believe modern machines are the devil's work. Probably right. They believe we're spinning on a wheel of stars designed to separate the living from the dead like an Iranian centrifuge. In the future, only the Amish will be famous. The rest of us will live happily underground, protected from falling satellites and the nuclear sky. The sun's sick furnace roars, agitating every molecule of Bruce's body. He spreads his gauzy lungs like wet wings. Okay. I'm now going to read the first poem in the book, which is called Subvocal Challenger, and it's named after the space shuttle, which had its last tragic flight in 1986. And if you were fully sentient in 1986, you'll probably recognize the references in the first part of the poem. If you were not, you might have to do some Googling of your own. And this is a poem that's spoken in Bruce's own voice, and I am also going to share my screen and show a little video while I'm reading this. Not that one. Subvocal Challenger. Age of Achille Lauro and Rainbow Warrior, of Mad Max and the Doddering Gipper, of plaid-clad women and mustachioed men tossing villains through plate glass, of Jan Hammer, desperately seeking Susan, easy lover, of Gorbachev with his skull cracked open. Age of Sweetness and the Refrigerator, age of I love it when a plan comes together, and the jittery schoolroom television where I watched the launch become a strange white praying mantis in the sky. Obviously, a major malfunction. It was happiness, taunting the three-fingered girl who moused along the playground fence. It was life when her brothers, thick-tongued and rough as the broken sidewalk, came hulking from an alley to kick my skinny ribs in. The bruising was an unexpected pleasure. I must have dreamed the rocket boosters corkscrewing away. Who could have known days later I'd be smoking Winstons in an abandoned mansion as girls stepped through windows in Brooke Shields jeans, dust floating in the sunlight like our nebulous desires. Who could have imagined all the stupid years to come, the wreckage falling toward the ocean, surface of the suffocating dark. Okay, unsharing. When I see the stop share thing, for some reason, I always think of the stop the steal thing, and it gives me trauma. So I'm trying to get over that. They need to make a different thing for stop share. Okay, this is another one that actually references that same era. It's a Sestina, and it's called First Blood, which is the name of the first Rambo movie. And I think it came out a few years before the Challenger disaster, the early 80s. And Rambo has a really cool knife, if you haven't seen it. First Blood. Starting with Rambo, he wanted a knife. Starting with Cub Scouts and scuffed plastic soldiers half buried in mud. Starting behind Holy Cross, where his friends slit Bruce's finger and smeared their bloody hands together, where the neighbor girl lifted her shirt. She was older, braver. Show us your boobs, the friend said, and there was her pale, freckled chest. Starting with race, we divide into clans, starting with gifted and slow, muscled and gawky, girls and boys, starting with money, the haves and have-nots, princesses and paupers, starting with blood kin and strangers. So not even Jesus can friend everyone. So no one has 6 billion followers. Bruce's friend is a cop in Chicago and does that cop thing with his chest. He tweets all lives matter. Not even the blood of martyrs can satisfy everyone. Starting with status, starting with skin. The cop is biracial, a hyphen American, half someone else. The girl grew up. She lives in Fort Lauderdale with girls of her own. She works for the Navy, Not much of a friend anymore, except on Facebook, nowhere. We all have our flaws, say the prophets, the movies, the breasts in the mirror. But this cop is being a prick. He's starting to tick everyone off. In First Blood's opening scene, there's no hint of the bloodletting to come. Only a decrepit outbuilding, boys playing, a girl and her mother stringing clothes on a line. The shot starts with Stallone in the distance, unrecognizable, neither friend nor enemy yet. "Excuse me," he says from deep in his chest, the film's first words, so soft you could easily miss them. He has almost nothing, a sleeping bag slung on his shoulder, has the knife, of course, but tucked away, bloody no more, and a flag on his chest from the war. The mother shoos the girl in the house when Rambo asks after his friend, who it turns out was dead from the start. Begin with the knife, the girl he can't have, the 4 types of blood, family, friendship, period, lung. Start with a hole in his chest. Okay. I'm going to try to share again here. I can find the right. Zoom. There it is. Okay, this next poem I'm projecting up here. Bruce is kind of a slippery character, and he can go from thinking about a war movie like First Blood. It's not really a war movie; it's a post-war movie. But thinking about a movie like First Blood, and then imagining himself as a soldier in that same war, and that's kind of what's happening in this poem. It's called Two Dimensions, and I'm going to read it twice, and you'll see why when I do. Two Dimensions. Once he was a soldier and excavated underground palaces for the president, thinking back to the night crawlers he used to catch, passing a light over their banded bodies as they sunned themselves in darkness. He'd wake up early and cast into the lake where bass were always waiting, where each day was a door. He swung his shovel, kicked up a choking dust. He cleaned his rifle every evening, crouched like a frog in the grass. The village was subsumed. He could barely see the blue temple beyond the cypress grove he walked through once. Once he was a soldier. He swung his shovel and excavated underground palaces, kicked up a choking dust for the president. He cleaned his rifle, thinking back every evening to the night crawlers he used to catch, crouched like a frog, passing a light over their banded bodies in the grass as they sunned themselves. The village was subsumed in darkness. He'd wake up early. He could barely see, and cast into the lake the blue temple where bass were always waiting, beyond the cypress grove, when each day was a door he walked through once. Okay. I want to share again, but I want to share a different. Another video here while I read this one. I like the video because then I'm hoping that you're not looking at me. So this is called Triple Crown. It's, I guess, pretty self-explanatory, but named partially after the famous series of horse races. So I'll play this while I read. Triple Crown. Vain question marks of shrimp, legs yanked from a chicken, muscles clattering in the pan after months of clinging to a sunken rope with what looks like quiet desperation. The radio plays the call from the 73 Belmont. Secretariat moving like a tremendous machine. Meat, muscle, cutting through the dark eyes of a potato. Bruce looks down at his fingers wrinkling around the knife. Last night he dreamed he was commander of a deadly sub and killed a spy by spraying him with ink from a poison pen. Every murder begins with a murderous thought. In between, we eat. Bruce longs for a defunct era, when we roamed savannas, filthy and amazed, when a gas burner flaring to life would have been astonishing, like a dead bird getting unsteadily to its feet, shaking its feathers and flying off, the sort of wondrous sight that led us to religion. Bruce is skeptical about the soul, but some evenings he feels a hunched, bow-legged creature wallowing in the tar pits of his body. Some mornings it frees itself and bounds away in the grass, or climbs haltingly to the top of a broad tree and looks out across the burning plains where animals run in frightened circles. I'll stop that there. He wins. Let me unshare here. All right, I have one more. I'm actually going to read a new poem. And yeah, this is a manuscript I'm currently working on, and I've never read this poem out loud to anyone. So I suppose this is a world premiere. This is called Not Safe for Work. Yesterday, I tore the air, the clouds tinged with copper, a sick immortal mining reds from glossy magazines. The sun glint off the wing had nothing on my burning. I never should have read those studies about the sharp decline in happiness that comes at about my age. Rate the pain from 1 to 10, shim the wobbly stare, match the lids to the fucking Tupperwares. Describe the feeling when rotting bananas lined up at Meijer look like severed monkey paws, grim trophies of some civil war. Yesterday, a man strapped spikes to his boots and clung like an insect in our sugar maple. I spied on him from a high window, envying his fearlessness and chainsaw. All the while, the waxy leaves piped light into the trunk. In the faculty meeting, I want to make it understood. This is our budget. This thread pinched between my fingers. This water pulsing in the bark. I dream my children have come from far away to drive slowly past the house. And where the tree once spread its arms is empty sky. Sunlight glares on the kitchen window, their faces melting in the glass. Thank you so much, everyone.
I think you're on mute, Elizabeth.
I don't even remember everything I said. You just watched my lips move for a long time. No, I was saying that first of all, thank you, and it's a real joy actually to have your work together in that way, because you're writing different things, but your humor, I can hear your humor in one another, which is a really lovely thing to witness and hear and see. We are now entering the Q&A portion of our evening, and so those of you who are in our audience, this is your opportunity to ask a question to Mark or Jill or both, and you can do this a number of ways. You can raise your hand, which we will see as we're eyeing the participants list. You can write question in the chat, or I have a question in the chat. And we can ask it for you if you want to type it and remain invisible, or you can come on camera and unmute yourself when we call on you. So all kinds of way to ask questions. And I will start while you all are thinking of the questions that you want to ask. I got to pick one. Jill, I'm going to ask you a question. And this has to do with the abrupt shifts in your essay, how you're braiding things together. And you do that so wonderfully in a number of essays that you have. And, you know, in our audience, we have students and we have writers, we have MFA, former MFA students. So if people in the audience are thinking about the braided essay and how to effectively do those shifts, you know, going from, you know, maybe there's an account, the internal the conversation you're having with yourself, the experience of Henry falling from a tree, and then this Alex Honold, is that right? Did I say his name right?
Honold.
Climbing. Honold.
Yeah.
How do, when you're putting that together, how do you make the decisions about splitting, cutting that out?
Painstakingly. Thank you for that question. That's a really good question. And I love doing that. It feels like physically building something for me. And I do it kind of physically, actually. I often begin with the story I think I want to tell, and I'm never right, never once in my whole life. So to the writers out there, the students especially who haven't totally come to know this for yourself. Like, you know, I hear this from students all the time. I don't know what this is. I'm like, how would you? You've only just begun. Like, there's no way you would know. And so I let myself, I think the main, if I have a trick here, it's that I let myself think weird things, right? And I let really kind of out there threads come in, and I don't shoo them away, right? So like later in this essay, Philippe Petit, who does the wire walking, he's going to come in, right? And then maybe we're going to get to juggling, right? And that's going to be part of it. And I don't think juggling, you have nothing to do with this essay, go away, right? I'm like, okay, you come in also. And then at a certain point, because I am this sort of person, I start color coding. Right. And so then I have to figure out. So I've got like a Henry thread, a Honal thread, a Petit thread, a musing on the idea of falling. And then I actually kind of feel physically as if I'm braiding them. And I always end up with about that much material left over too. Like there's a lot of hair that doesn't go in the braid at the end. But does that answer your question, Elizabeth? So I build the pieces. I think oftentimes they kind of end up building, and then I chunk them up into like units that make sense so that I can build with them. So we might need another word other than braiding, because it kind of feels like braiding, but it also kind of feels like building with blocks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Ooh, Ira has a question.
So this is a question for both of you. I mean, I'm stunning reading, by the way. Thank you so much for sharing with us. But one of the things that I love with both readings, because both readings contain public figures or public moments, right? Very public figures and public moments. So I know, you know, each essay or each poem has a different process, but for the things that you read were, for example, these moments, were these public moments and figures, were they the occasion for the essay or a poem, or were the essay or poem the occasion to introduce these moments? Like, I guess what came first in the initial drafting of it?
Mark, why don't you go first, and then?
Yeah, I always want to let the world in, you know, like that where no one is an island, and that, you know, we all live among everything that's happening, and that's pop culture, politics, everyone who lives around us. So like for the Challenger disaster is kind of like the first public like tragedy that I remember, and that had a real impact on me. I like sort of remember Reagan getting shot, but I was little, and it wasn't I mean, he didn't die for one thing. So the Challenger disaster has always like been in my mind. And so I started from there. Like I knew I wanted to write something about that. And maybe it just was a line or something. And then I wanted to see like what else was swirling around at that moment in the culture. And so I had to go back and sort of like, and that helped me remember who I was then. Like listen, what music was I listening to? What movies was I being exposed to? So that started to help me remember like who I was then. Of course, this poem's about Bruce, not me, but we share some characteristics. So I think it's a give and take. You know, there's always like you start writing about one thing and then it's the same as Jill's talking about. It leads you to something else and something else and something else. But yeah, I've never been one to like want to write these kind of meditations that don't really have like the popular or external world, that don't let them in. I always want to let everything in if I can.
Yeah, that was a really good answer and a really good question, Ira. To say something a little different, I guess, is that when I start an essay, the starting point is usually, and I'd be curious to ask you, all of you here, whether this is true, like just something I can't let go of, right? Like something that's, and obviously watching Henry fall from the tree was something I could not let go of. Like I truly do write to live, right? And I had to think like, how am I gonna like get over that and then like let him climb another tree, basically, right? So I had to start asking questions about fear and how different people handle fear. And Honold was just, that news, I saw that news and I was like, wait, what? And so I guess one thing I would add is that I think it's really important to come across these things organically. Anytime I've tried to force them, they've never worked, but like I really it was about 6 months after Henry fell. And I was just still really thinking about it all the time. And I heard this story about Alex Honnold and I was completely captivated by it. Like, how could somebody do that? And so I followed it, right? And that's how that thread unraveled. And also, I mean, that's crazy. Come on.
Karen, you have a question.
Yes. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, I too have a fear of heights. I noticed that both of you have enjoyed playing with structure. So this is kind of a question for either or both. I don't know if you're familiar with the term or the concept of wabi-sabi, where art or music or whatever just kind of is allowed to be messy or encouraged to be messy. When you like, Mark, when you were writing that poem with the lines that could be read across or down, did you think first of a structure, or did you start to write it and then find that certain lines wanted to follow other lines, and why can't they do both? Go follow this line or that line? I mean, how basically did you come from it from a wabi-sabi side or from an architectural side? I guess is my question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, the answer is like, I very much evolved in that. So it used to be like, I went to grad school to study poetry and I thought like I need to know how to write sonnets. So I tried to write like a bunch of sonnets and I was just like forcing myself to write sonnet after sonnet and they were all terrible. So, after a while, I stopped doing that because I was like, why am I like writing all these sonnets when I don't like them? And so nowadays, like that poem that I read, I started writing it, and I can't remember who said this, but there was a visual artist who said, like, how do you make a painting? And the person said, well, I do something to the canvas, and then I do something else to the canvas, and then I do something else to the canvas until I'm done. And that really describes my writing process now. So that poem, I was writing it, and it wasn't in that form at all. I was trying to do this kind of weird thing where I was imagining Bruce in a different life than it normally has in the book. And it just wasn't working. I wasn't happy with it. And so I started moving things around. And then I started putting things side by side. And then once I had a couple lines that were working both ways, then I went down to like the work and toil of like making all those lines match up how I wanted them to. But really it was like I fell into that just by like doing different things. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Karen, for that question. And also, I did not know the term wabi sabi, but now I know what I am. I am as wabi sabi as they come. I make just terrific messes when I work. I come from a family of visual artists, and so I like the metaphor that Mark used, right? Like we just like used paper mache and paint and glue and just made messes all the time. And so I'm the least like that in my family, I think, although when I try to, so occasionally my like super efficient Jill Christman will pop in and be like, surely there's a more efficient way to write an essay, right? I could choose the form first. But for me, there is not. Like every time I try to do that, it's an epic failure. You know, in my line of work, there's this thing you might have heard of called the hermit crab essay. Everybody's writing them, right? Everybody, you choose the form, you got this borrowed form. I have written so many failed hermit crab essays, you have no idea, because that's just not the way. I can't choose the form first. I have to go out into the field and pick the flowers and then come into the kitchen and be like, what sort of vessel could I possibly put these flowers into? And so that's the way my process works more. If you like, and I just revise and revise and revise and revise and revise.
I do want to add one thing to that, which is like when I did write all those sonnets that failed, that was really good. I mean, now because I learned the form, I learned to practice, I learned the tricks. And so now if I'm writing a poem and it like starts to approach sonnet length and has some sonnet, then I can feel it, you know, and it's because of all that practice. So that both things are important.
Thank you.
both. Oh, and thank you, Karen, for your question. Megan has a question.
Hi. So my question is for Mark. I was looking at that poem with the 2 columns, right? And it's so cool. And I kept thinking, what does he do in readings when he has a really cool structured poem like that, but he can't put it up on a screen so that the reader can actually look at it and say, oh my gosh, look at what he did with those line breaks. Oh my, wow, mind blown, you know? How do you convey when you're not able to show the reader during a reading how cool structurally that poem is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot more about what to read than I used to. You know, I used to just like run into it, say, flip through the book. But I really want the audience to have a good experience. I will say too, if you like that poem, you need to read the poems of Tyehimba Jess, who's like one of the best poets out there and does that structure like 1,000 times better than me and many times over. So check his work out. Really amazing. I probably wouldn't read that one if I couldn't show it, really, because I think it would be confusing that I like started reading it twice. And I really like the ones with the videos too. Like I actually, when I put that Secretariat video up, I started seeing things in the poem that were connecting that I hadn't noticed before. And so I thought I should put that up. Like at the end, the animals run in frightened circles. And I'm like, the horses are running in circles. That seemed pretty obvious stuff, but it started to make connections in my mind. So yeah, there's different kinds of readings. I've read in bars where like people are talking so loud that you're kind of shouting over them, and you're not going to get away with stuff like that in that setting. And so I'll read things that sound good aloud that the audience can pick up on quickly. But yeah, I think a lot. I mean, I've learned so much from younger writers, because I think I was talking to Ira about this a few weeks ago. Like, younger writers think so much about performance these days, and they're doing such amazing things. And I'm like, I got to step up my game a little bit. And I'm not that dynamic of a personality, so I have to like have little tricks like that. Thank you. Good to see you.
It's so fun to see you, Megan. Megan was my student like a million years ago when I was a grad student at Alabama. Isn't that sweet?
Thank you for your question, Megan. I was wondering a similar thing. Yeah, when you can't share the video or the poem itself. What do you do? Are there any other questions? Oh, Sophia.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sophia, Mark's sister, Jill's sister-in-law. I mean, yeah. So the flip side of that was a great question, and I'm kind of wondering, how do you trust the reader to kind of get that it's, I mean, you know, you say 2 dimensions, so we're like, wait a second, but I don't know, like what goes on in your mind when you think about how the reader might experience not just that poem, but some, like all of them, I guess.
Yeah, good question. I try to trust my readers more, you know, than I want to let myself trust them, because there's an urge to like try to explain everything, and but then there's no surprise and discovery and delight for the reader. So like I know there's like a lot of stuff in my poems that I know is there that a lot of readers aren't going to get, but then again, they're going to see stuff in my poems that I don't see, you know, so that it's just that give and take. And that's what's so beautiful about writing and reading. And, you know, there's so much creativity going on both sides. The reader and the writer are both like doing a lot of creative work. So I try to not trust the reader, but just like know the reader's going to find their own way through it. And maybe it's not the same way that I read it.
Thank you, Sophia. And I see Edward's hand.
Hi, this is for the both of y'all, or, you know, whatever, if y'all don't really feel in terms of like process questions, because I know process questions always are hit or miss personally, but I'm kind of thinking more in terms of like surfing, in the way that like when somebody, you know, is surfing and they either have a really bad fall or get hit by a really big wave, like the whole thing is like you got to get back on the board as soon as possible so that you don't get scared. And I don't think like the term of in terms of writing, like it's a scary process when you've been struggling, you know, to write or something, or like feel like you're struggling to get words on the page. But what's like, if you do feel that way, or like you can't get back to the page, or you're struggling to get there, like what's a pick me up, or what's like something that you feel like kind of helps you brace that and like get through that and continue your process?
That's a great question, Edward. And thank you for it. What gets me, you know, my answer is a little bit dull. It's that you know, when I feel that way, you know, my muse throughout my life has been fickle at best, if ever existent. But I do find magic in writing when I've got my butt in the chair and I'm doing it. And I know just because I've done it enough that if I get my butt in the chair and I do it, the magic will come, you know, that next wave will come and I might have a chance to ride it and I might fall off, but you know, I'll live to surf another day. And so sometimes if I like, so mostly at this point, I could just say, I'm gonna, and I have deals with people, some of them might be here, like, you know, you can make a deal with a friend. I'm gonna write an hour, you know, twice a week this week, right? You do it too, I'll do it, I'll just check in. And so I think you can do accountability things to get yourself back on the wave. In terms of like more kind of crafty process things, I'm not beyond, I like to keep a little writer's notebook that I just have all the time. So anytime I'm feeling stuck, I can open it and be like, oh, that time I saw a dead bird under the bush in the parking lot on my, you know, and like, I'm going to sit with that image for a while and start from that place. So for me, it's a combination of accountability, knowing that the next wave will come just because it's come again and again and again. Like, I know that feeling like, oh, I'm never going to write anything again. And like that last thing sucks so bad, but it's not true. That's not true. Just shoo that person away. And also just starting with an image, you know, let the image carry you to the next thing because images are so powerful that way.
Yeah, I absolutely love the surfing metaphor. That's such a perfect like metaphor for writing. I'm stealing that if it's okay. And it's, you know, like surfers go out and sometimes the waves don't come for a long time, but they're out there like floating on the water and the sun's out and the beach is there and their friends are there. Like, it's a good time anyway, you know, like even writing badly to me is somewhat enjoyable. And it's just, yeah, but I will say too that I do go for like drought periods where I'm not really writing very much. And then I'm just trying to like read books, watch movies, like be with my kids, go outside, you know, and that stuff feeds me. And I figure like that stuff's all filling me up. And the next time I get like a streak going where I'm sitting down a lot and writing, things come. And I mean, I've had days where it's just like I feel so uninspired, and I sat down and like wrote stuff that really surprised me. And that's the greatest feeling in the world, you know, because it's like inspiration doesn't come that often. So yeah, surfing metaphor, thank you for that.
Thank you so much. And you could totally steal it. No problems there for me.
That was great, Edward. Thank you so much. Any other questions? I've pulled together a prompt. It's not the most creative one, but I've pulled together a prompt from things that you all said to give to all of us as we slip away this evening. Jill, you said when you're looking for things to write about that you dig into something you can't let go of. And then you both have talked a lot about images. So the prompt for the evening is to dig into an image, ideally maybe from this week, or if you need to go further, this month, that you can't let go of. And then, to borrow Mark's painting language, you know, put something on the canvas, and then put something else on the canvas, and then something else, and see where it takes you.
I love that.
Thank you both. Thank you, Jill and Mark. Thank you, Ira, for co-sponsoring and pulling all the pieces together. Thank you, Ocean, for your assistance in pulling all of this together for everyone. And thank you, audience. It's so much fun to see such a variety of people on the screen from Kenyon, from beyond Kenyon, the writing world, from family, apparently, which is here. So lovely. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Ira and Ocean and everybody at Kenyon. And thank you, Mark. It's a joy. It's super fun to read with you, and everybody for coming. My heart is warm.
Hi, everyone. So great to see you.
Have a good night. Stay safe.